She rejected a waiter without knowing he was a millionaire in disguise. When a Bugatti arrived to pick him up, she panicked. Heather Wilson adjusted the golden name tag on her impeccably pressed blazer for the third time. The senior receptionist at the Grand Plaza Hotel, New York, one of the most exclusive in the city, prided herself on her flawless appearance and irreproachable posture that she'd maintained for 15 years in this position. At 45, her carefully dyed brown hair, which concealed her gray strands, framed a face with subtle yet perfect makeup. At the hotel, she was known for both her efficiency and her demanding temperament. "Good morning, Ms. Wilson," the young intern, beside her, timidly greeted. "The manager asked me to let you know that a new employee for the restaurant arrives today. He requested that you show him around the facilities." Heather barely contained a sigh of irritation. Another one to train. Another one to make mistakes she would have to correct. "What time?" she asked dryly. "He's already in the manager's office," the intern replied, shrinking slightly. When the new employee appeared in the lobby, Heather examined him with a critical eye. He appeared to be around 38, of medium height, with an athletic, build-strong facial features with a 5 o'clock shadow that gave him a casual look. Exactly the type of carelessness she detested. He wore the standard waiter's uniform, but something in his posture seemed different. "Good morning, I'm Ryan Miller, the new waiter," he introduced himself, extending his hand with a calm smile. Heather shook his hand quickly. "Heather Wilson, senior receptionist. I'll show you the facilities." During the tour, she maintained the professional and distant tone she reserved for subordinates. Ryan, meanwhile, asked surprisingly perceptive questions about hotel procedures, observing everything with attentive eyes. "How long have you been working here?" he asked as they walked down the corridor leading to the restaurant. 15 years, Heather replied, not hiding her pride. "I started as a reception assistant." "Impressive," Ryan commented. "You must know this place better than anyone." Heather nodded, slightly disarmed by the genuine comment. "I know every detail of this hotel. I've seen 3 renovations, 2 management changes, and hundreds of employees come and go. In fact," she continued, recovering her formal tone, "you should know that at this hotel we value excellence. We don't tolerate lateness or carelessness, especially with VIP guests." Ryan smiled. "I understand perfectly. I believe excellence is in the details." At the end of the tour, he surprised her again. "It would be my pleasure to invite you for coffee sometime. I'm sure there's a lot I could learn from your experience." Heather raised her eyebrows, genuinely surprised. A waiter inviting her for coffee, she who had dined with ambassadors and conversed with international celebrities. "Thank you, but I'm a very busy person," she replied coldly. "The restaurant is that way. Your supervisor should be waiting." As she watched Ryan walk away, Heather couldn't help but notice the way he walked, with a calm confidence that seemed out of place for someone of his position. She shook her head, dismissing these thoughts. She had more important things to worry about, like the charity dinner at the end of the month, for which the hotel expected to receive New York's social elite. What Heather couldn't imagine was that this simple waiter would completely transform her life in the coming months. In the following weeks, Heather observed from a distance as Ryan integrated into the restaurant team with surprising ease. Unlike other newcomers, there were no complaints about his work. On the contrary, comments were always positive. She noticed, annoyed, how younger female employees blushed when he passed by, or how even managers stopped to listen to his opinions. "I don't understand all this commotion," Heather commented to Martha, the housekeeper who had become her friend over the years. "He's just a waiter who speaks 3 languages fluently and knows wines like a sommelier," Martha replied with a mischievous smile. "Besides, he's not bad to look at with that smile." Heather rolled her eyes. "Please, Martha, we have standards to maintain." Deep down, what most irritated Heather was Ryan's persistence. Every few days he renewed his invitation for coffee, always polite, always with that calm smile that was beginning to distract her, and each time she found a new excuse to refuse. One morning, Heather was especially stressed with preparations for the charity event when an international guest began shouting in the lobby, dissatisfied with something in his room. His English was heavy with an accent that Heather had difficulty understanding, and the situation was becoming embarrassing. Suddenly, Ryan appeared beside her and began speaking to the man in fluent Mandarin. The guest's eyes lit up, and soon both were laughing like old friends. In minutes, Ryan had not only resolved the problem, but converted an angry client into an admirer of the hotel. "How did you—" Heather began, completely surprised. Ryan shrugged modestly. "I lived in China for a few years. You learn a lot working in hotels around the world." Before Heather could question him further, the manager approached, effusive. "Ryan, excellent work. Heather, we need both of you in the planning meeting for the charity event. With her experience and his international knowledge, you'll make an excellent team." Heather's stomach sank. Working directly with Ryan for weeks, she opened her mouth to protest, but the manager had already walked away, leaving her alone with the irritatingly charming waiter. "Looks like we'll finally have that coffee," Ryan commented with a discreet smile. "Or rather, several planning meetings." Heather straightened her shoulders. "This is strictly professional, Mr. Miller. I hope you understand the difference." "Perfectly, Ms. Wilson," he replied. But his eyes shone in a way that said otherwise. The planning meetings became a test for Heather's nerves. Each suggestion she made, Ryan complimented with innovative ideas. Each problem that arose, he presented practical solutions based on previous experiences. How could a simple waiter have such extensive knowledge about international luxury events? During one of these meetings, they worked until late. The restaurant was closed and only a few employees remained at the hotel. "I think that's enough for today," said Heather, rubbing her tired eyes. "I agree," Ryan replied, closing his notebook. "We've already missed dinner time. You must be hungry." As if on command, Heather's stomach audibly growled, provoking laughter from both. The first time she had let her guard down around him. "I know a place nearby," Ryan suggested. "Nothing fancy, but they make the best home-cooked meal in the city." "Area," Heather hesitated. Dining with a subordinate was against her own rules, but she was really hungry, and the idea of returning to her empty apartment to heat a frozen meal seemed depressing at that moment. "Just a quick dinner," she finally agreed, "and we each pay our own way." The restaurant was exactly as Ryan had described, simple, welcoming, with a delicious aroma of home cooking. To her surprise, the owner greeted Ryan like an old friend. "Old Joe, this is Heather, my colleague from the Grand Plaza." "Ah, the famous Heather," exclaimed the gray-haired gentleman. "Ryan talks about you a lot." Heather shot a questioning look at Ryan, who just smiled enigmatically. During dinner, conversation flowed with surprising ease. She found herself telling him about her childhood in rural Kentucky, the sacrifices to move to New York, the years of struggle until securing the job at the Grand Plaza. "You built your life from nothing," Ryan commented with sincere admiration. "That's much more impressive than being born with a silver spoon." Those words touched Heather deeply. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen, not for the position she held or the appearance she cultivated, but for her life journey. At the end of the night, Ryan insisted on accompanying her home. In the taxi, Heather found herself questioning everything she thought about him. Perhaps there was more to this waiter than she had initially imagined. When they arrived at her modest but well-maintained building in the West Side, Heather hesitated before getting out of the car. "Thank you for the company," she said formally, extending her hand. "It was pleasant." Ryan smiled that smile that now disconcerted her for reasons she didn't want to admit. "The pleasure was mine, Heather." It was the first time he had called her by her first name without the formal miss or ma'am before it, and surprisingly, she didn't mind. Rain pounded against the windows of the Grand Plaza Hotel as Heather worriedly observed the movement in the lobby. The storm had begun suddenly, and now the news was warning of flooding in various parts of the city. Many guests were returning in a hurry, soaked and irritated. "The managers are at a conference in Long Island," Martha informed, approaching quickly. "We're trying to contact them, but the roads are blocked by the rain." Heather took a deep breath. As senior receptionist, the responsibility fell on her shoulders. We'll need to reorganize some reservations and prepare extra rooms for guests who may not be able to leave today. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out completely. Cries of surprise echoed through the lobby, plunged into darkness. Heather felt panic rise in her chest. A failure of this magnitude could ruin the hotel's reputation. "Everyone stay calm," a firm, controlled voice cut through the darkness. It was Ryan, appearing with flashlights in hand. "The emergency generator should be working shortly. Please remain where you are." To Heather's surprise, he began delegating tasks with natural authority. "Carlos, check on guests in the elevators. Julia, distribute these flashlights to staff on each floor. Martha, could you organize additional candles and flashlights for the rooms?" When glances turned to Heather for confirmation, she simply nodded, impressed with Ryan's leadership capacity. While the generator partially restored power, Ryan organized a small emergency meeting at the reception. "We need a plan for the next few hours," he said. "Heather, you know the official procedures better than anyone." Regaining her composure, Heather took the lead. "We need to check on guests with special needs, elderly, families with young children. The restaurant should prepare simple meals that can be served even with limited power." Ryan added, "I also suggest creating a community space in the main hall. We can organize games, serve hot drinks, turn the emergency into a memorable experience." The Friday night progressed, and under the joint leadership of Heather and Ryan, what could have been a disaster transformed into a unique experience for the guests. Many commented on how cared for they felt, despite the adverse circumstances. Near midnight, when the situation was under control, Heather found Ryan alone in the kitchen, preparing hot chocolate. "How did you know exactly what to do?" she asked, accepting the steaming mug he offered. "It seemed like you'd been through this before." Ryan smiled enigmatically. "Let's just say I've learned to handle crises in other hotels." "You're a mystery, Ryan Miller," Heather commented, allowing herself a rare smile. "Sometimes you seem to know more about hotel management than many managers I've worked with." An amused gleam passed through his eyes. "Maybe I've had good teachers." Heather felt a strange connection in that moment, as if they were sharing a silent secret. They stayed talking until dawn, exchanging stories about hotel experiences, favorite books, old dreams. Heather couldn't remember the last time she had spoken so openly with someone. When the lights finally returned, around 3 in the morning, there was a spontaneous celebration among staff and guests. Amid the joy, Heather found Ryan's gaze from across the room. He raised his mug in a silent toast, and she returned the gesture, feeling something awaken within her, something that had long been dormant. The next morning, Heather was called to the general manager's office, who had returned in a hurry. To her surprise, Ryan was also present. "I've received extraordinary reports about how you two managed the crisis yesterday," said Mr. Matthews, the general manager. "Guests who could have filed complaints are filling our guest book with praise." Ryan remained modest. "It was a team effort. Heather knows this hotel like no one else." The manager smiled, satisfied. "That's why I've made a decision. Ryan, I'm promoting you to service supervisor. And Heather, I'd like you to train him in the coming weeks." As they left the meeting, Heather couldn't help but notice the curious look some employees gave Ryan. There was something in the air, whispers and speculation. "People are talking about you," she said, as they walked down the corridor. "It seems no one believes a simple waiter would be promoted so quickly." Ryan shrugged. "People always talk. What matters is the work we do." Heather felt confused. On one hand, she was genuinely happy for Ryan. He more than deserved the promotion. On the other, a small part of her wondered if there was more to this story than she was seeing. What she didn't know was that her questions would soon have answers, and those answers would forever change her worldview. The following weeks brought a new routine for Heather. As Ryan's official mentor in his new position, they spent many hours together reviewing procedures, discussing improvements, evaluating team performance. To her surprise, Heather discovered she enjoyed this partnership. Ryan was a different student. From any she had trained before, he absorbed information with extraordinary speed, asked insightful questions and, most importantly, genuinely valued her experience and knowledge. "You've changed," Martha commented during one of their breakfast meetings before the workday. "You're lighter. You smile more." "Nonsense," Heather replied, looking away. "I'm just satisfied with the progress of the work." Martha smiled knowingly. "If you say so. But know that I'm not the only one who's noticed how your eyes shine when that simple waiter is around." Heather felt her face heat up. She was about to respond when her phone rang. It was Ryan asking for help with a group of foreign tourists who had just arrived. When she reached the lobby, she saw Ryan conversing fluently in French with an elegant couple. Noticing her presence, he introduced her with evident admiration. "This is Heather Wilson, our hospitality expert. If you need anything, she's the person who can make the impossible possible." The warmth in Heather's chest increased with those sincere words. How could he see her this way, not as the rigid and sometimes bitter receptionist that many considered her to be, but as someone valuable and special? After resolving the situation, Ryan invited her to lunch. "I have a proposal for you," he said mysteriously. At the hotel restaurant, he explained, "I'm organizing a social project for underprivileged children to learn about hospitality and tourism. I thought perhaps you could give some classes on customer service. Your experience would be invaluable." Heather hesitated. "I've never done anything like that before. I don't know if I'd have the patience to teach children." "You teach me every day," Ryan replied with a gentle smile. "And I'm much more stubborn than any child." They both laughed, and Heather found herself agreeing. The following Saturday, they met at a public school in the Bronx. Seeing Ryan interact with the children, patient, funny, genuinely interested in their stories, Heather felt something loosen inside her. When it was her turn to speak to the children about her journey, she surprised herself by sharing not just the rehearsed professional tips, but also her own struggles, the prejudices she had faced, the nights she had cried from exhaustion before achieving her position. On the way back, walking through a nearby park, Ryan commented, "You were amazing today. Those kids saw in you what I see, an extraordinary woman who built her own path." Heather stopped, looking at him with curiosity. "Why do you care so much? About these children, about the hotel employees, about me?" Ryan gazed at her intensely. "Because I believe a person's value isn't in the position they hold or the money they possess, but in the difference they make in others' lives." At that moment, something definitely changed between them. There was no kiss, no grand declarations, just a shared look that contained silent promises of future possibilities. Back at the hotel on Monday, Heather realized she saw the world with different eyes. The employees' smiles seemed brighter, the problems less catastrophic. Even her appearance had subtly changed, still elegant and professional, but with more vibrant colors, looser hair, an easier smile. She didn't know yet, but this internal transformation would be tested in ways she never imagined. The Grand Plaza, New York, buzzed with preparations for the biggest event of the year, the charity gala ball that would gather business people, celebrities, and politicians for a night of luxury and philanthropy. As senior receptionist, Heather was at the center of the whirlwind, coordinating special reservations, VIP demands, and the complex logistics such an event required. "We need to confirm the menu with the chef and the final guest list with the Foundation's office," said Heather, consulting her clipboard during a planning meeting. "And we still have that situation with the international pianist who requires a specific piano." "I've already resolved the piano problem," Ryan replied calmly. "I spoke with that contact at Carnegie Hall I mentioned. They'll loan the Steinway for the night." Heather stared at him, surprised. "How did you manage that? We've been trying for weeks without success." Ryan shrugged with an enigmatic smile. "Let's just say I have some friends in musical circles." Each day brought new surprises about Ryan. His contacts seemed to range from starred chefs to museum directors, from international musicians to renowned designers. For someone who had supposedly worked only as a waiter in hotels around the world, his network of relationships was extraordinarily sophisticated. The afternoon before the big event, Heather was in the file room looking for documents when she found a folder that had fallen behind the cabinet. When she opened it, her heart nearly stopped. It was a confidential report about the possible sale of the hotel to an international group. Among the documents was a photo of the purchasing group's CEO, and the face in the photograph was unmistakably Ryan Miller's, identified as Ryan Miller Stewart, heir and future CEO of the Stewart International Hotel Group. Heather felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. Ryan wasn't a simple waiter. He was the billionaire heir of one of the world's largest hotel chains, disguised among the employees. All the puzzle pieces fit together. His extensive knowledge, his international contacts, his familiarity with management procedures. Tears of humiliation welled in her eyes as she remembered how she had initially treated him, the disdain she had shown the times she had made him wait while she attended to important guests. Worse still, she remembered the confidences exchanged, the vulnerabilities she had exposed, thinking she was on equal footing with him. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she didn't hear the door open. "Heather, is everything okay?" It was Ryan, looking concerned. She quickly hid the documents, but he noticed her troubled face. "What happened?" he asked gently. "Nothing," she replied curtly. "Just tired from the preparations." "Heather, I know you. Something's wrong." Anger and shame exploded inside her. "You know me? Really? Or am I just part of your how the common people live experiment?" Ryan paled, immediately realizing she had discovered something. Before he could respond, his phone rang insistently. "I need to answer this," he said, clearly torn. "It's a family emergency, but we need to talk. I promise to explain everything." Heather crossed her arms, her posture defensive. "There's nothing to explain, Mr. Stewart, or do you prefer Miller? What's your real name, anyway?" The pain in his eyes seemed genuine, but Heather was determined not to be fooled again. "I have to leave immediately for Miami," said Ryan. "My father had an accident. I'll be back for the event tomorrow night and we'll talk. Please, Heather, don't jump to conclusions." After he left, Heather remained motionless for long minutes. For the first time in years, she didn't know what to do. Part of her wanted to confront him publicly, expose his farce in front of everyone. Another part, the one that had been silently growing over the past months, wanted to believe there was some explanation, that the man she was falling in love with wasn't a complete lie. The gala night arrived, bringing with it the glamour and sophistication that the Grand Plaza New York represented. Lights, music, important personalities in high-fashion dresses and impeccable tuxedos, everything exactly as Heather had meticulously planned for months. Except nothing seemed important. Now, as she circulated through the hall in her navy blue dress, the most elegant she could buy with her receptionist's salary, Heather searched each face, each corner, for some sign of Ryan. He had promised to return for the event, but so far, he hadn't appeared. "Heather, darling, you look stunning," exclaimed Martha, approaching with a champagne flute. "But you look worried. Haven't seen your Prince Charming yet?" Heather forced a smile. "I don't know who you're talking about." Martha lowered her voice, conspiratorial. "There are rumors circulating about Ryan. Some say he's not who he appears to be. The kitchen staff commented they saw him getting into a limousine days ago." Heather's heart tightened. So it wasn't just her who suspected. "Martha, Before she could continue, the lights in the hall dimmed and Mr. Matthews, the hotel's general manager, took the stage to speak. Heather prepared herself for the official announcement everyone was waiting for, the sale of the hotel to the Stewart Group. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is with immense honor that we welcome illustrious figures from the business, artistic, and political worlds today," the manager began. "This event marks not only an important charitable action, but also the beginning of a new chapter in the history of the Grand Plaza New York." Heather held her breath, expecting the announcement of the sale. Instead, the manager continued, "I would like to call to the stage the man who will make this new chapter possible. A visionary in the international hotel sector who has chosen our hotel for an innovative project. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Ryan Miller Stewart." A murmur ran through the hall as Ryan took the stage. He was unrecognizable in an impeccable Italian suit, his hair perfectly styled, a posture that emanated power and confidence. Nothing remained of the simple waiter Heather had known, except for the kind eyes that immediately found her in the crowd. "Thank you all for the warm reception," Ryan began with a clear, confident voice that easily dominated the room. "In recent months, I've had the privilege of working incognito at this hotel, in various positions, from waiter to supervisor. This experience, which we internally call Project Roots, has a purpose: to truly understand each gear that makes a hotel function, to value the work of each employee, and mainly, to identify extraordinary talents that often remain invisible due to traditional hierarchy." Heather felt her face burn as dozens of glances subtly turned in her direction. Everyone seemed to know something that, until yesterday, she had been completely unaware of. "The Stewart Group isn't just buying this hotel," Ryan continued. "We're initiating a revolution in how we manage hospitality. And for that, we need the best talents, not just those with diplomas or important surnames, but people with passion, dedication, and practical knowledge." His eyes found Heather's, again, who remained paralyzed in place. People who built their careers from nothing, who know every detail of their functions, who treat each guest with the dignity they deserve, regardless of who they are. The speech continued, but Heather barely heard the words. Her mind was in turmoil. The last pieces of the puzzle fit together. That's why he knew so much about international hospitality, why he spoke so many languages, why he had contacts everywhere. When the speech ended to enthusiastic applause, Heather felt she couldn't stay there. With her heart racing, she discreetly headed to the balcony, desperately needing fresh air. New York City stretched below, a carpet of lights against the night sky. "Heather." His voice was closer than she expected. She turned and found Ryan, or rather Ryan Miller Stewart, standing a few steps away, watching her with an expression that mixed hope and apprehension. "You lied," she said simply, her voice trembling with contained emotion. "All this time, I never lied about who I am," he replied, slowly approaching. "I only omitted my surname and position. Everything else, and my experiences, values, feelings, was real, especially what I feel for you." Heather shook her head, confused. "Why? Didn't you tell me? Why did you let me treat you like a subordinate all this time?" "Because I needed you to see me as Ryan, just Ryan, not as the Stewart heir, not as a billionaire, not as your boss." He took another step toward her. "I've spent my entire life being judged by my bank account, not by my character. You were the first person in a long time who saw me genuinely change, who challenged me, who wasn't impressed by status or power." "And when were you going to tell me?" she asked, still resisting his proximity. "After the event. I had it all planned," he smiled slightly. "But as in everything in life, you were one step ahead, discovering it on your own." A silence charged with emotion hung between them. In the hall, the music and conversations continued, but there on the balcony there was only the present moment. Two different worlds that had collided, and now needed to find a new balance. "What happens now?" Heather finally asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Ryan gazed at her intently. "That depends on you. From a professional standpoint, I want to offer you the position of Training and Development Director for the group. No one knows true hospitality better than you." He hesitated briefly before continuing. "From a personal standpoint, well, that's also in your hands." Heather felt tears in her eyes, not of humiliation as before, but of an emotion she couldn't name. Her entire life had been built around appearances and status, always believing she needed to impress important people, to be valued. And now the most powerful man she had ever known was saying he admired her precisely for who she was, without artifice. "I need time," she finally said, "to process all of this." Ryan nodded, respecting her space. "I completely understand. Take all the time you need." As he turned to return to the hall, Heather called out, "Ryan?" He stopped, hopeful. "Your father? Is he okay?" A grateful smile illuminated his face. "Yes. It was just a scare, fortunately. Thank you for asking." As she watched Ryan return to the party, Heather realized that, even with all the emotional Confusion. One thing was clear. The man she had fallen in love with, waiter or billionaire, remained the same person. And that, more than any shocking revelation, was what truly mattered. The morning after the big event, the Grand Plaza New York seemed strangely quiet to Heather. Normally, she would be the first to arrive, organizing everything for the day ahead. But today, there was something different in the air. Employees greeted her with knowing smiles, some even with a new deference that deeply bothered her. "Good morning, Ms. Wilson," the young intern timidly greeted, handing her an elegant envelope. "Mr. Matthews asked if you could come to the conference. Room at 10 o'clock. And this arrived for you." Heather opened the envelope and found a simple card with Ryan's now familiar handwriting. "Some decisions are easier when made away from the spotlight. I'll be waiting at our place. R." Her heart raced. Our place could only be old Joe's restaurant, where they had shared that first meal months ago, the moment when everything began to change. At 10 o'clock sharp, Heather entered the conference room, where Mr. Matthews awaited her along with two executives she recognized from the party. "Heather, glad you could make it," the manager greeted, visibly excited. "As you must imagine after yesterday's events, the hotel is entering a new phase. The Stewart Group has big plans, and Mr. Ryan was quite specific about the role he'd like you to play." One of the executives handed her a folder. "Here is the formal and proposal for the position of Director of Hospitality Excellence for the group. It includes supervision of training in all hotels in the network, implementation of new service protocols, and participation on the executive board." Heather opened the folder and almost choked when she saw the proposed salary, several times greater than her current income. Additionally, there were benefits she had never imagined: profit sharing, international health insurance, a company apartment. "It's an extremely generous proposal," she said, closing the folder, "but I need some time to consider." The executives exchanged surprised looks. Clearly, they had expected immediate acceptance. Of course, Mr. Matthews replied, slightly disconcerted. "Mr. Ryan mentioned you might need a few days. Take your time." Leaving the meeting, Heather went to her locker and grabbed her purse. She asked the intern to inform others she was taking the day off, something she had never done spontaneously in 15 years of work. When she arrived at Old Joe's restaurant, she found it surprisingly empty, except for a single table in the back where Ryan waited with 2 cups of coffee. "Did you have the restaurant closed just for us?" she asked, unable to hide a note of irony. Ryan smiled. "No, I just asked Old Joe for a few hours of privacy." As a friend, not as a customer. Heather sat down, observing him carefully. Without the elegant suit from the night before, wearing jeans and a simple shirt, he seemed closer to the Ryan she had known over the past months. "You received the proposal," he commented, not as a question but as a statement. "Yes, it's impressive, but you didn't accept immediately." Heather hesitated, organizing her thoughts. "Ryan, I need to understand some things before making any decision. Why me? There are much more qualified professionals with international training, MBAs." "None of them have what you have," Ryan gently interrupted. "Integrity, practical knowledge, the ability to see people beyond their functions or status." He paused, taking a sip of coffee. "Ironically, you learned this the hard way, being unfairly judged throughout life, and yet, when it really mattered, you saw beyond appearances." "After I discovered who you were, yes," Heather retorted. "But before that, I treated you exactly as I always criticized others for treating me." Ryan smiled. "And that's precisely the transformation that makes you the right person for the job. You've experienced both sides, prejudice and overcoming it. There's no MBA in the world that teaches that." Heather felt tears in her eyes, but held them back. So many conflicting emotions flooded her: gratitude, confusion, hope, fear. "And what about us?" she finally asked, her voice almost a whisper. Ryan extended his hand across the table without touching hers, just offering a connection. "That's also in your hands, Heather. I would be a hypocrite if I said my position doesn't complicate things. There will be those who say you're with me out of interest, or that I'm abusing my authority. He gazed at her intensely. But I know my heart, and I've learned to know yours. If we want, we can face this together. Heather looked at the extended hand, feeling she was on the threshold of a decision that would change her life forever. You. No, I'm not from your world, she said softly. I didn't attend the same schools. I don't know the rules of this game. And thank God for that, Ryan replied with a sincere smile. My world desperately needs people who don't play by obsolete rules. It needs authenticity, compassion, different perspectives. He hesitated, then continued. And I need someone who sees me as Ryan, not as a steward. Someone who challenges me to be better, who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm wrong. Someone like you. At that moment, looking at the man before her, not the billionaire, not the heir, just Ryan, Heather made her decision. Slowly, she extended her hand until it touched his. Let's face this together, she said, her voice now firm, but with one condition. Anything, he replied, gently squeezing her hand. The position they offered me, I want to truly deserve it. I want to start lower, learn the business as you did, prove to myself and others that I'm there because of competence, not personal connections. Ryan's face lit up with genuine admiration. That's why I fell in love with you, Heather Wilson. We have a deal. The transformation in Heather's life in the following months was extraordinary. She started as a training consultant at one of the group's hotels in Boston, far from the curious eyes of the Grand Plaza, New York. She immersed herself in work with the dedication that had always characterized her, but now with a new perspective, valuing each employee not for the position they held, but for the potential they demonstrated. Her relationship with Ryan evolved slowly, with mutual respect and genuine admiration. He visited whenever possible, and together they explored the local culture, discovered small restaurants, talked about their visions for the future of the group. 6 months after that decisive conversation at Old Joe's restaurant, Heather received a phone call from Ryan. We need you in New York immediately, he said, his voice mixing seriousness and excitement. Tomorrow we'll present the new talent development program to the board, and you're the only person who can make this happen. Ryan, I'm still not ready to... You're more than ready, he gently interrupted. The transformation you implemented in Boston has become a model for the entire network. Guest and employee satisfaction rates have never been higher. Heather felt a wave of pride. She had worked tirelessly, applying everything she had learned in years of experience, now enriched by new perspectives and resources. A car will be waiting for you at the airport tomorrow morning, Ryan continued. Don't worry about anything, except bringing your brilliance to this presentation. The next morning, upon landing at LaGuardia Airport, Heather was surprised to not find the corporate driver she expected. Instead, she saw Old Joe, the restaurant owner, smiling and holding a sign with her name. Old Joe, what are you doing here? The gentleman smiled enigmatically. Boss Ryan asked me to pick you up, Ms. Heather. Said it was a special surprise. Confused, Heather followed him to the parking lot, expecting to see one of the company's executive cars. Instead, Old Joe led her to where a stunning blue Bugatti was parked, attracting everyone's attention. Before she could process what was happening, the car door opened and Ryan stepped out wearing an impeccable suit, but with that same gentle smile that had won her heart. Welcome back, Director Wilson, he said, making a small bow. Heather felt her face burn as she realized everyone around was watching the scene, an ordinary woman being received like a queen by a man who clearly belonged to the country's economic elite. Ryan, this is... She hesitated, torn between embarrassment and emotion. Over the top? He completed, laughing. Probably, but I wanted to do something special to mark your triumphant return to New York. Extending his hand, he offered, we can go straight to the presentation if you prefer. The board is eager to meet the brilliant mind behind the revolution in Boston. Heather looked at the extended hand, at the luxurious car, at the people watching them with curiosity. For a moment, she felt the old impulse to be impressed by external symbols of status and power. Then she smiled and made a decision that symbolized her entire journey of transformation. Actually, she said, intertwining her fingers with his, I'd prefer to walk a bit. There's a charming cafe a few blocks from here. where we could review the presentation, and afterward perhaps we could stop by the Grand Plaza. I'd like to visit some friends." Ryan's face lit up with admiration and pride. An excellent idea. As always. He turned to old Joe, handing him the car keys. "Could you meet us at the hotel later?" The gentleman nodded with a knowing smile, as if he perfectly understood the significance of that moment. As they walked down the busy avenue, hand in hand and chatting animatedly, Heather felt a deep peace. Her value wasn't in the position she now held, the salary she received, or the powerful man beside her, though she genuinely appreciated all these blessings. Her true value was in the journey she had traveled, the lessons she had learned, the person she had become. And as the stunning Bugatti slowly followed them at a distance, a symbol of luxury that now, for both, had become secondary to the authenticity they found in each other, Heather understood that life sometimes offers us lessons through the most unexpected disguises.